Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Kovac Enterprises. We are now working on the Batmobile from Batman vs. Superman, and I believe it's going to be episode number 1. First thing I kind of want to point out to you, I'll kind of go over the instructions here, especially on the front page. Basically, there's a notation that this particular Batmobile is a precision tooled kit with many small delicate parts, which is very true. And as far as painting your kit, it also states that this kit is designed to be built in sub-assemblies. We would suggest that it's best to paint each sub-assembly separately before final assembly. And it may be a good idea to paint some parts during the assembly. So that is kind of my mindset for my initial preparation on this. All in all, there was probably about a total of around 14 or so sub-assemblies I had to put together after I trimmed everything up and sanded and all that kind of stuff. So as you can see here, for instance, we'll just kind of take one of the sub-assemblies, which I have here. This is actually the machine gun turret assembly, and believe it or not, there's actually 5 different parts to this assembly. So that's just basically one example right there. As far as like the front wing as well, that goes in front of the chassis, same thing. There's actually 5 separate layers to put the front wing together, so that's another sub-assembly. So these are just basically examples that I'm showing you here. So basically too, I'm leaving a lot of these parts, like say the chassis assembly, on the sprue sheet for the moment. You can see kind of here, let me get my little pointer out here. This is kind of like, say, basically a mock-up where we have the actual engine that drives the Batmobile, which had like 3 parts to it. Very simple engine. There is some detail on it, but that's all there is to it. We also here have the exhaust coming off of the engine on top of the transaxle, and then we also have our what they term as the spider support braces for the rear wings of the Batmobile. And what I did here is basically basically it's a sub-assembly too. It has about 5 parts to it. And while I was gluing them together, I made sure that the locator pins for the assembly lined up with the actual holes to the transaxle. So there you go. I let that kind of sit overnight, you know, to have it glued. Like I said, this is just a mock-up. I will be taking this apart and then you know, painting it afterwards, after everything is said and done. So with that being said, the next step I want to do is basically when I do get to the painting part, which is very shortly, I'm going to go ahead and start with a flat coat of some Craft Smart satin acrylic paint, kind of like as a primer to go ahead and spray on the pretty much on anything, because the Batmobile in this instance is the star of the show, and it's basically one monochrome color with different variations of shades. So like I said, I just want to start off with a base coat of some flat black on the parts, and then I picked out 4 different, or maybe 3 different paints for applying to the Batmobile for the top coats. And basically I'm going to go ahead with this Folk Art Sequin Black Metallic. And like I say, all these paints for the top coat is going to be metallic, because I want to kind of bring out the metal part of the Batmobile. So there's metallic black on that one there, and of course then we're going to have the metallic from Folk Art silver sterling I'll be using. So there you go. And then of course the main body of the Batmobile will be the gunmetal gray, which is also going to be metallic. So essentially these are going to be basically the three main colors I will be using for the Batmobile. There's going to be, like I say, a combination of both airbrushing and some actual, when I get down to the detail work, will be actually using the brush, just a regular standard brush, to bring out the highlights and the details. So like I said, with that being said, stand by and we will be right back. And we're back, and I just kind of want to show you how I prep for the base coat of the Batmobile. Once again, like I said, I went ahead and chose a flat black, in this case the Craftsmart satin acrylic paint, and these are some of the tools I use. First off, like I said, here's the Craftsmart satin black, and I use that with some windshield washer. I have a cup with some water in it and a Q-tip so that I can use that during the airbrush spraying process, because sometimes the tip of the brush does dry out a little bit, so I just wipe it down with a Q-tip that's wetted with some water. Since I was dealing with a lot of painting for the parts, I went ahead and used the actual 1 ounce jar for the pache, so that it'd be more efficient and I can spray a lot more parts rather than using the little quarter cup that you normally see on the pache. And of course then I have like a little stirring stick, and basically all I do is basically pour the Craftsmart paint, you know, up to a certain point, and then I use the windshield washer to make it like 2% milk consistency. And once I have it all stirred up and ready to go, I just go ahead and attach it to my airbrush. Now this particular airbrush that I have here has the number 5 needle in it, with its complementary tip here. And once I have everything set up, I go ahead and adjust the needle here to let the paint flow out to what I want desired. And once that is done, I'm ready to paint. And like I said, I don't do one part and spray it all at once. I do it in nice little layers at a time, so each of these parts probably have about 2 to 3 spray coats on it to get that nice looking finish through an acrylic paint. So with that being said, we'll take a look at some of the parts for examples after I had it dried for at least a day. This paint does, you know, dry real quickly, but I just choose to wait like 24 hours to let it really cure, despite it being a water-based paint. So stand by. Okay, so just to kind of show you an example of how the Craftsmart acrylic paints work once they've been dried, and doing it properly. This is the kind of finish I have here. Now this is just the base coat. I will be putting on some top coats and some detail work later on, but just want to show you the first step in my process here. So you can see how nicely that was airbrushed on. That's the interior bucket. I just went ahead and sprayed everything in there for, like I said, for a base coat. Here's the end panels for the Batmobile. I want to make sure that I covered everything, because part of this will be covered by other parts, so I want to make sure I got in there and give it a little detail. And like I said, once again, This is the upper part of the Batmobiles, and you can see how nicely that came out. Like I said, these are just kind of examples of what it looks like if you do the painting with acrylics using an airbrush. So as you can see, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see, like in the background, all the parts have been sprayed, and as well as my smaller little fiddly parts. One of the things I do is basically take a styrofoam kind of display thing here with my alligator clips, and basically spray all my parts. And then let me raise this up so you can see a little bit better here. So these are all my little smaller parts on display here. I let sit dry overnight, so just kind of turn this around so you can kind of see all the parts. So this is our first step in this first episode, is basically getting all the parts painted with that base coat, and now we're going to be dealing with some of the more detail work where I will be doing some hand brushing and drawing out the details of some of these parts from BvsS. So with that being said, hope everybody has a good day, and we will be back with another episode. So until then, everybody have a good day, and we'll catch you all later. Bye.